great. So what is this podcast? Yeah, tell me, and you tell me.
Okay, so the podcast is solutions-based conversations with visionaries and original thinkers. And you're such a visionary. So I was like, in the middle of me doing all my nerdy fascia stuff and realizing it has so changed my life to have a relationship with my fascia. And then I was like, Anna is such a brilliant genius visionary. I have to have her on the show to talk about it.
Thank you. You always make me feel good. It feels like I just want to find a channels to get people to know it, because it is so life-changing on just like physical and emotional and spiritual levels. It kind of taps into whole personhood, and I just am passionate about that.
Yeah, totally, on all levels. So I'll record an intro before I put this out, since we're already in it and I want to take advantage of the time that I have with you. We'll just dive in. So so I'm curious to know, I'm curious to know about your journey with your body and with fascia, and like how you found your way in to this sort of quantum transformative relationship with the body.
Okay. I was 21 and I'd been studying. I was always kind of an embodied person, I think, like loving the body. I'd gotten certified in Pilates in 1997 when it was just kind of on the cusp, and I was a dancer, and it wasn't until I probably...
I'm just curious about your dance background.
Oh, I was, I think my passion is jazz dance. But I didn't like where jazz dance could be expressed. Like I wasn't wanting to go on show boats and do tours and work on Vegas. I really loved conservatory style dance, but I love rhythm and movement. And so I also wanted to be on Broadway, but I didn't have like the Broadway voice. And so that was a legit place to dance. But so I did classical training in ballet. Then I did a lot of jazz through my 20s. And then I would say later 20s, I was in San Francisco and I was doing a lot more kind of contemporary. And I love the movement, but it didn't feed my soul, because it just is very more intellectual and heady than it is like sassy and free and, hot. I love them. I love hip hop. I love, these kind of and so those were my backgrounds of what I wanted to do. But I was really deeply restricted by what my body could do. And so I think it was at 2000 maybe, I've been teaching Pilates for a while, and I was also doing psychotherapy for a history of childhood sexual abuse. And I remember kind of at one point going from having no real body awareness to oh my God, something's wrong. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I still don't know, with all of the medical exploration and going to this professional and this, medical doctor, and looking at my GI tract and looking at my, I did everything. I can't even think about respiratory tests, and they thought I had, IBS and all of these kind of hit and miss diagnosis, which once you know what fascia is, it makes sense why no one could really touch in on one thing, because fascia is integrated in everything. But I just remember a moment where I was like, something is wrong and I feel really, really bad. And it wasn't fatigue, it wasn't chronic fatigue. It was the way I describe it is I felt like I was wearing a straitjacket, and on the inside of the straitjacket were blunt and sharp objects that were constantly kind of vicing into me and pushing and hurting me. And I was a Pilates teacher. I had studied a lot of anatomy. I had not just studied one style of Pilates, I had studied yoga and all of these different kind of disciplines, thinking that I was going to find this answer. I had, started to dabble into acupuncture at that point, and kind of just what is happening and why am I feeling this? And I started having to just kind of shut out the outside world, because nothing itself was really answering the issue. And so I would spend hours in my studio apartment in San Francisco doing these really basic elemental things that were really triggering my pain, almost using my pain like Hansel and Gretel, stones or pebbles to find my way through. And I'd be like, if I push here, it is excruciating. And when I move like this, if I move it, it immediately doesn't hurt me anymore. And then it would last for a little bit of, my reprieve would last for a little while, and then it would come back. And so pretty soon I was like, well, I don't want to have to like open up my body 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and then the next day it's back again. So I started exploring with techniques and technologies to make permanence was a big deal for me, because I'm like, I just don't want to like have to go out and dance and then I'm back in pain. And so what I started noticing is that a lot of the things that I was taught and all of my anatomical training and all of my dance and all of my fitness was contributing to the symptoms. They would flare up. If I would lift my rib cage, for example, I would be able to run like I was training for a marathon. And if I would actually go to dance class and do a bunch of sit-ups and they'd close my ribs and make me hold my core, I would have flare-ups of asthmatic type, like I can't breathe, I'm a 10-pack a day smoker. It was that dramatic. And I'm like, so something that I'm being taught is hurting me and keeping this, you know, and it's layered in because at the same time, I feel like my body was releasing a lot of the childhood trauma. And so I was able to see that some of this is physical, some of this is emotional, some of this is my body literally trying to purge memories that I didn't have in my brain. And there's a book called, you know, The Body Keeps the Score. And it really does. Like the tissues are holding the template, or is almost like the narrative. The body it's written on your flesh, right? Your story is written in your flesh. And that became really clear as I was doing this stuff. So anyway, I don't know, was that an extensive that's how I came into it, is just like this desperation to, and I got to go from having like my leg naturally, I didn't have turnout. And all of a sudden I worked with the first quartile and I got 180-degree turnout as a 21-year-old, which in dance, they're like, oh, you're just not born with hips like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I fucking am. Yeah, I can do it. And then all of a sudden I like did these things and my leg went to like balance chain extensions, that my body wasn't naturally like born to do that. But as I started like unlocking these kind of secrets and what fascia is capable of and how it works truly, I was able to get like exponential function out of my body that would have made me more like an Olympiad. Because there are people who drive Lamborghinis and there's people who drive Hondas, right? We have different vehicles and what we can do. But what I was interested in doing was hacking my body that was built like a Honda, but I wanted it to perform like, you know, a Lamborghini. And it was like a really, it's almost like I call the body a divining rod, because what you test it will tell you what is true. And so I would find from a physical level, if I did this with my rib cage, I would get this effect, and it was producing all of the things like restriction, you know, exhaustion, digestive issues. Like it would create the opposite of what is true and good. And if I did these things that like nurtured and opened fascia, all of a sudden I literally, it was like the divining rod said, yes, do this. Yes, this will make your leg higher. Yes, you don't have problems sleeping anymore. Yes, you know, your insomnia is linked to this digestive thing that's going on. So anyway, I really like that my body was so messed up. I still don't know that I've worked on a body that was as complicated as mine. And I won't even go into all of the things because it doesn't really matter. But it took me 25 years to be like, oh, you know, piece by piece. And then my body would literally say, that's a no. And that's a yes. And that's a no. And that's where I start to love more of the spiritual side of fascia, because it's not just for the physical body. It literally is reading your consciousness, your body consciousness, and will tell you. And with them, you know, it has 3-to-1 receptors, for example, that collect information to any other tissue in your body. So it's listening 3 times the amount to the stimulation that you're encountering in life and giving you this unbelievable source of information from which to make better and more deep and intrinsic true knowledge, true wisdom. And so when you work with it, I'm sure that's why it's life-changing. It's, you know, this extra layer of information that can be garnered and made into wisdom as you work with it.
Okay, thanks for that. There's so many pieces, and it's so like multidimensional and layered. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking of like you incurred a sort of like epic and unusual degree of pain that couldn't be sourced. And for your individual path, that completely served you in terms of your mission and your purpose in tapping into this
Great.
This
That's
whole
totally
realm of fascia. And as well, just like your intellectual curiosity and your strong will and determination of like, you are going to figure this out. Because that's what I realize about now that I have a relationship with fascia, is that it makes me so self-responsible with my body. I'm not abdicating authority to other people to heal me. I'm being invited to go deeper, deeper, deeper to figure it out for myself. So it's like, you're so uniquely like the right one to give the world this gift of our fascia.
Thank you, Danny. That actually feels really good. I have never thought about it like that. Sometimes it feels like a burden. I hate to say that, but it's like, it feels like, why have I been given this and I'm not able to, or like, I want to get it, like, I see it. Can everybody have this? I see the benefit behind it. Can everybody else? And how do I translate, or how do you find the people who are longing for this? And so I feel like, in some ways it's downloaded. Like, I did not have a medical degree. I did not go to science in my undergrad. I literally put together, there wasn't even a lot of science when I was doing this. There wasn't a lot of science behind fascia. It's now becoming more and more accessible, but it just wasn't there. And so a lot of times I'm like, does everybody else, can they do this? Is this something that someone else can do? And so it feels like a little bit of a, you're right. I laugh too, because I think that my brain, I'm ADHD. And I noticed that while I was like, I'm perfectly suited to have like this really complicated mass of like stuff coming out of my brain. And I was able to channel it into the body to make order of something that's very complicated with my complicated brain. And then trying to, I guess the last 20 years has been like, how can I make this simple and accessible for people so that not everybody has to do the journey with this complicated, overrated, thing. I've been able to put a language to it, and and hopefully it's still kind of complicated, right? Like, but I look at life and I'm like, what isn't complicated? To the person who wants to fully consciously actualize, life is about taking what is complicated and removing the dross and being able to like refine that into pure gold, right? That's the kind of spiritual side of the journey. And what medium you work with, I love the fascia because it connects the entire person, right? Throughout. It like starts with the physical body that makes it really like, I feel this is me being human, to what does that look like when it's in my emotions? What does this look like in my spiritual journey? What does this look like, and you can layer it and go as deep as you want, right? If you just want to feel good, great, just stretch your fascia and do some GST, because I think that it's, the most direct way in to working with it. But then if you want to do the other deeper stuff, it kind of encourages you to do it anyway, as you've noticed, right? You start doing it and then it's like, oh, but what about this? But, oh, this is,
Yeah. It's a slippery slope. I can totally relate to feeling like it's a burden, because I feel the same about quantum languaging, where it's like, I have this relationship with words and I know it can help everyone. And how do I get it to everyone? And the pressure when I'm not getting it to everyone because no one else is doing it. It's like its own layer of kind of like torture blessing.
Yeah. What's so interesting when you say that is that when you have I think when you've been given a gift to give others, right? It's like not just a gift unto itself. It's almost like there's this deep sense of, I always use the word complicated, but it's like you have, quantum is both you, but it's also outside of you. And that's the weird thing for GST is it's like, it's a journey that happened to me, just like it can happen for other people. So it is something, I don't see GST as me. It's something a part of me that I am then also in a relation. It's like just a tricky relationship where it's like, it's not just like, I made this up. And that's why I didn't call it like the Anna Rahe technique. Cause I'm like, this is something apart from me that I've also experienced, but without me, there wouldn't be this way to communicate it and to reach other people and to help people. And so that I think is what makes this kind of a burden, where it's like, you have a multidimensional relationship with an entity that is apart from you, right? Quantum, vocabulary and making energetics out of how you express yourself is something that is apart. It exists whether Danny does or not, but it doesn't actually get to people unless Danny can bring it to them. And that's where that burden is, where it's like, I don't know. It's just an interesting relationship, especially when you're trying to do a business. For me, it was really hard when I'm like trying to explain it to people, and I want it to grow as a business, and I want it to be, have integrity to honor the work that is there, you know? Anyway, I think maybe everybody has a version of that burden, but maybe it's in different forms. So I hear you. It just is a very interesting relationship, and you keep working on it, right? You keep like doing your quantum, and I keep doing my GST, hoping that at some point it becomes, and there will be a tipping point. I think some of this is just what people are telling me, which I think it resonates, is you have to give it mass, like it has to accumulate enough mass to have gravity, right? And so as we continue to build out these bodies of work and people find it and their lives are changed by it, each person who recognizes it is adding to the gravity, right? Or to the mass, so that it will have more gravity, and then more things come from it. More people are attracted to it. That's the laws of, that's my language is physics, but,
Yeah.
So we just keep doing our job every day, Danny, with passion and
Totally.
try to support each other when we're feeling bad about it.
Yeah.
So your encouragement.
Yeah. I mean, I see so many parallels in what we're doing. And I'm wondering, and I also think, yes, everyone has their own dharma and their own burdens, but I also think there's something unique when you're bringing something revolutionary, and also when you're bringing something that's so multidimensional, and like knowing what it takes to refine that into a language that is accessible, like just that in itself is its own skill set that I think anyone who's teaching anything physical is wise to master. And then, you're translating things that no one else has done before. So I think it is unique. I just want to acknowledge that your path is unique. I definitely see you as a vanguard, as a visionary. I'm wondering what it was like for you when you were living in Los Angeles, where you have everyone who's chasing the fame thing and saying, look at me for maybe the right reasons, maybe not so right reasons. And it's also the center of so much physicality and hot bodies and so much exercise. And like, what was that like for you to launch GST in LA?
That's a great question. I think in hindsight, I've lived now in Boulder for 2 years and done very small things with GST and just had to take a break, because I think that I was chasing the wrong people, right? Like Los Angeles has this amazing energy of creativity and drive and the see me, and it's kind of addictive, and you don't see it at the beginning. It's like, you're just trying to I'm authentically just trying to get it out there. And yet in hindsight, it's like most people who are into fitness for aesthetics alone are not even conscious that there's something more. They're not looking for it. They wouldn't even resonate, even if it hit them in the face. I think that it was a struggle and a lot of times, like, I thought that the entry point would be like, come and feel great. And then they would buy into the deeper stuff. And I was surprised that GST can produce all of these aesthetics in an even more holistic way. Like, I just wrote a blog the other day about toning and sculpting, and how with fascia it's very different than with muscular, traditional fitness methods. And I think that I was trying to have people you can get everything you want on this really superficial level, but do it from deep. Like, if you start deep, then all of these are cumulative as well. And that is not the method of LA, right? The method of LA is it's only skin deep, and it's only what you see. And it's not that beauty comes from multidimensional places. And fascia does. Like, your aesthetics of your face are greatly dependent upon the deep tissues in your lungs. Right? Like, that's a structural fact. And so go ahead and do all your facial stuff. But if you're not, addressing the source, and this comes back to some of these spiritual lessons where it's like source versus symptom. And LA for me was very symptom. And I could never bridge the gap of okay, you want me to lift your ass? Totally done, doable, done. I can do that. But you're going to require that you go in and feel some shit that you don't want to feel. And you're going to have to be okay, taking a little bit of a circumnavigated, what feels like, it's not even actually circumnavigated, it's more direct, right? Ironically, it's more direct to change your body that way, but it's not what we're trained to. And so you're all, and I don't know if it's just LA, like I think humans, so there's this lesson in healing that they talk about that I think applies to all humans. And it says that it's not by how deep you go in your journey of reconstruction of self, it's how fast. And that the human mind that's damaging. So when you try to change someone's mentality or someone's body or someone's, self-concept too fast, it's damaging because the human mind needs time to absorb, digest, rearrange, restructure. And it's why evolution takes so long. It's why the human, process is millennia old and will go on for eternity. But that's one of the things you're up against when you have a new concept to share with people, is that humans' minds are not as flexible as what we'd like it to be. And that's one of the reasons I like GST, because we make your body flexible and then your mind is sure to follow, right? They are reflexives of each other. So I was going to say, I'm also ADD, so I'm going to swing back and say in LA, I think that more people's minds are not bent towards deeper, dynamic, geometrical, three-dimensional thinking. It's very much like one-dimensional thinking. And that's really hard to sell. Like they would feel the difference, but they would have no context. They would come in and be like, that felt so good. It was really hard, but I'm not exhausted. I'm not tight. I'm not sweating, and so I don't know, in my head, a workout is, I'm exhausted, it hurts, but I at least know I did something. And you're like, okay, I don't know how to reframe your brain towards being like, actually, what if you could get everything you wanted and you feel elated because we work endorphins, not adrenaline? What if you could actually get the lift and the healthy tissue and the wrinkless face, but it required that you actually be quiet and calm and not manic and abusive, right? It's this paradigm shift of reality. And I think that it's probably all humans, but this is the power, I would say, if I were to circle back to the benefits of, or kind of the seed of what GST was, is that pain, right? We spend all of our lives trying to avoid pain. And generic pain is not just physical, it's emotional, it's psychological, and it's spiritual. Separation from divine, disassociation from people, disassociation from self, external obsession versus internal reflection. And that pain, whatever it is, we try to, and we're trained to stay external to it and not feel it because pain is bad. Even in rehab, I went through Pilates, and if I felt pain, they'd be like, okay, let's not do that. And I'm like, no, you're missing the entire opportunity. Once I got what Fascia was doing, and that pain is actually positive communication, carrying tons of information that will literally within 30 seconds eliminate if you do these things. Like it's like a temporary discomfort. And you get better and better at being with the discomfort of your body, the discomfort of your emotions, the discomfort of your soul. And then all of a sudden you start hungering to seek the discomfort to eliminate it. And then what lives underneath is the wholeness that you are desperately seeking. It's the completeness. It's the, the foundness that we want. And so I feel like that was something that LA wasn't I don't know, maybe I was just, so interested in, that's my spiritual journey back around, is that it started with the body. And now I'm really interested in what GST does for the soul. And that's the complete story. That's the complete narrative. That you start with something so elemental and learn your pain to move it here. And then you'll learn how to move it here and here and here. And it's kind of, I don't know, that's the complete story. So being in LA, I just went after the wrong market. I think that I was trying to match, and it was to a mind that wasn't ready, that wasn't, totally driven to that. Even their spiritual practices in LA are really interesting, like the different religions. And I don't have to go into that. You ask me questions, but I find it fascinating because they are still drawn towards self. In most religions, true religious experience tries to understand self so you can eliminate it. And then you're more connected to everything else. And if you look at a lot of the spiritual things, even if I wasn't going after them, they're like self-determination and laws of attraction. And you bring to you what you think. And it's like, The whole goal here is to deal with our pain so we can get out of our way and be of service to others. Like that's kind of this like global cosmic thing. And so if you keep thinking it's all about how am I going to get myself here and myself, right? So even spiritually, I don't know that LA was ready for the message that, you know, could have been here with what you do and what GST is doing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's frustrating being so far out ahead, like from the future and waiting for humanity to catch up. Like, come on, guys, we have really wonderful things to share with you.
So much things. And this is what I bounce back and forth with Danny is that, are they not ready or are we having a hard time getting to them? And that's what frustrates me is because when I don't know if you find this, but I find that when someone experiences GST, the light goes on and they're like, oh, of course there's a difference. If I try to talk it to you and if I try to explain it to you, it's all theoretical. But as soon as you put it into the body and into experience, you're like, aha. And I think the same thing is with you and that's the bridge of frustration where it's like, once someone gets GST, it's not that far in advance.
Right.
They're hungering for it. They're looking for it. They don't know that it exists. And so my spiritual journey has been like, how can I take away anything that would stand in the way? How can I remove anything that would keep them? Or a better yet is, you know, how can I actively pursue to give them this experience so that there is a landing thing? And I think that maybe it's true with both what you do and what I do is, and it's not by chance, it's not just what we do. Humans need experience to transform ideology into applicable life transformation. So you can sit with an idea all you want, but it doesn't come across. Like you worked with me a little bit to try to write my book, right? And I share this with you because in the process of writing a book is very apropos to how life works, where I write things constantly in my brain and I know the words and I'll even write it a little bit on paper. And it's like, but the creative versus the craft is really different. And the craft is the process of actually assembling and making something concrete of something ideological or esoteric. And that's a lot of that people, I think, in their journeys don't realize is that they think they're doing the change inside just by having the thought, just by liking your concept, just by understanding. But experience is the number one like ingredient that life requires for growth and transformation. Pain and experiential, like you have to do something different to be something different. It's not enough to know it. You have to physically do something in this form.
Totally.
Right? And so maybe there are people, also that to say is I think there are people out there who desperately want to do your work, to do GST. And that's, that's the hardship of the sage, right? That's what is we're working up here to make this accessible. And the work of them is to get to a place where they can recognize it when they see it and do it.